It's from Dave on email. Following back-to-back losses for Real Madrid in La Liga, are they ready to pull the trigger on Alvaro Arbeloa, David?
I don't think this season. I think it's going to be a bit of a slow and painful death for them from now until the end of the season. I don't think Arbeloa is cut out for it. I don't think he'll be the main man. And they'll hire a big name in the summer. But I'd be really surprised if they were to get rid of him before the end of the season. I'm not quite sure who would actually come in, for one. And then secondly, I think they need a bit of some stability. Considering, look, the Liga is still there. I know they're behind in the table, the second in the table. Still got La Liga, still got Champions League. So they still can win things. I just don't think Arbeloa is the man going forward, looking at things.
With La Liga, that they shouldn't win it, but they could. I think that's the important thing, because we've had this point swing from Barcelona to Real Madrid and now back to Barcelona. So if you think like their last two games, since they went top of the table, basically they've lost both games.
Yeah. Against
Osasuna. Osasuna away can happen. Losing at home to Getafe definitely cannot happen.
Yeah, when you are licking your wounds and you just need a nice little comfy home game, you do not want to be going, you do not want to be facing Getafe, because they come out with one thing in mind, and that is to frustrate the hell out of you. They did so incredibly well, and it was just remarkable. I think it was one of Bordalas has had a lot of fantastic results at Getafe. And I think this is up there in terms of achievements, considering I think that club don't spend any money, and Bordalas is pulling players off the streets essentially to fill that thing.
You could have had me.
Are we allowed to mention Martin Satriano on successive shows?
Go on.
I think we have.
Yeah. Brandy, you do you.
Well, it's funny, isn't it? In a game where, if you think of the last two home games where Kylian Mbappe hasn't been able to play, Gonzalo Garcia has come in and made an absolutely huge impact. And in this one, this was the first one where you thought, oh yeah, they are massively reliant on Kylian Mbappe. And I guess that has really, that has been the feeling for Real Madrid's season, that it's papered over, or Mbappe has papered over a lot of the cracks. Now, it's unrealistic and unreasonable to expect Arbeloa to be able to sort out all those issues on their own, but on his own. But basically, he is just a caretaker, and they're going to see who's available in the summer. I mean, look, at this moment in time, they are 4 points adrift from Barcelona, who are, of course, leading La Liga at the moment, and they don't look anything like winning the Champions League. So, frankly, they don't look good enough. It's easy to say, well, they won't go on with Arbeloa, but it just depends on the options. And really, the way they appointed him and said, the coach will be replaced when Xabi Alonso went. The coach will be replaced by Álvaro Arbeloa. There was no as interim, as permanent, length of contract, because they know that they're in a real state of flux at the moment. And what if they don't get what they want in the summer? They might end up having to stick with him, right?
They might have to. They might end up having to talk to Roberto De Zerbi or something like that. It's an interesting managers market, because there's going to be a few clubs looking for managers, and after seeking big names, you never know what Pochettino is going to do, whether he's going to, whether he wants to return to club football. So there's a few little layers to it, I think.
I would love to see De Zerbi go to Real Madrid. I mean, look, I don't think it's a good idea at all.
Neither do I. That's why I want to see it.
I know. I think it's like Augustus Gloop being let loose in the Wonka factory. I would love to see how it turned out.
Does the question not allude to the fact that back-to-back losses are not acceptable for Real Madrid?
One loss isn't acceptable. A draw isn't acceptable at the Bernabéu. No, honestly, it isn't. We were speaking on the main show about Marseille and being like Real Madrid in terms of going from one game to another. You're never far away from a crisis around the corner. And Real Madrid are very, very much like that, more than any other club.
We've been told. And Stephen Scotch on YouTube says, rumours are circling regarding Oliver Glasner, tipped to replace Jürgen Klopp as Red Bull's head of global soccer. Do you think the move would make sense for him? What have you heard, Andy?
I don't think it makes sense for him. It made sense for Klopp because he wanted to step back from frontline coaching. Obviously, Glasner's been driven to distraction at Palace over the last couple of months. I think that's clear, and it's not ending brilliantly for him at Crystal Palace. And hopefully, in time, the great work he's done there will be recognised. And I don't think he's really helped himself at various points with some of his public proclamations. But anyway, much like at other clubs he's been at, he's a combustible bloke who is a very good coach. And that's been clear at Wolfsburg, that's been clear at Eintracht Frankfurt. I guess the link is being made because of his Red Bull background. But in terms of the sort of person who would make sense for this role, he strikes me as pretty much the last person. Firstly, he wants to be a coach, and this isn't coaching. Secondly, you want someone who's diplomatic. And he's not. So really, if you're looking for like bullet points of, what sort of person do we want from this role, points 1 to 10 could be not Oliver Glasner, really, couldn't they?
It would be a backward step, ultimately, I think. He's enhanced his managerial reputation considerably at Crystal Palace, what he's done there, in the conditions that he had to work, in terms of lots of players being sold from under him and such. Incredible achievements that he's had at Palace. And to go upstairs, as it were, away from the coaching world would be backwards in my eyes.
I think the interesting thing is the talk about Red Bull moving on from Klopp already. Because, of course, when he gets the job just over a year ago now, everyone thinks, oh, what a great get. What a great get this is. Jürgen Klopp is one of the biggest names in coaching. But that's the point, isn't it? Coaching. This is a completely different thing. The idea that you have to really set the house style for all sorts of Red Bull clubs. Now some will say, well, it hasn't really clicked at Paris FC, despite the fact he's made a number of visits there. But I think there's a question how much actual influence Red Bull have at Paris FC, as to be determined. We'll wait and see. One of the things that's been pinned on him is Ole Werner, who was his pick to be the new Leipzig coach, has been only really a qualified success so far. And we'll only really know if it's been a success if they qualify for the Champions League at the end of the season. Now, of course, we were talking about the Champions League race in Germany, and a couple of clubs who could really do with making it are going to miss out. And Hoffenheim sort of gate crash in the top 4 as stands, even though they lost last weekend, is sort of part of that, really. So, I think that's a big part of it as well. Obviously, Red Bull Salzburg are sort of rebuilding as well. So I guess the job must be way different to what Klopp thought it would be, and it's still relatively undefined. Now, I think the other part of the question is, if Klopp and Red Bull were to part ways, would he come back to coaching? Because, of course, our immediate reaction is to sit there and, that'll be a great pick of jobs for him. But what if he really doesn't want to come back? I mean, I think we all assume that, well, no one doesn't not want to work in football anymore. I mean, to me, Klopp really gave that impression by the end of it at Liverpool. He looked burnt out. And I guess the question is, do you want a little holiday or do you want a complete break? Do you want to look at football completely differently? Is he going to move to some sort of advisory role at a FIFA or a UEFA or something like that? Has he found it difficult
to Wenger role?
Yeah, exactly. Has he found it difficult to toe the line? Conversely, in a corporate environment, I think these are all questions to be answered. But unless I'm mistaken, he doesn't look like he desperately wants a new coaching job at the moment. Well, you compare this, David, to when he took the Liverpool job, for example. After leaving Dortmund, he intended to take a break, and that lasted, 4 months? Because he felt Liverpool was one he couldn't turn down. Whereas, they've definitely been offers for him since he left Liverpool, but he hasn't really seemed to bite so far.
So in regards to that, would Real Madrid be too good to turn down then? Or would that just completely ruin that nice little sabbatical you've had by going into a job of that level of pressure?
David, what if Real Madrid is the sabbatical? if you're only going to last like 4 to 8 months.
And given this question mentioned Mr. Glasner, can I put to you Glasner to buy Leverkusen?
Oh yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Oh, I like
Okay.
that. I
Okay, let's put
like
that one out
that
there.
a lot.
If we have to put it out there, we put it out there. This question from Weetabix5 on YouTube. Were Flamengo, the Brazilian team, right to sack Filipe Luís after it was discovered that he was talking to Blueco, as in Chelsea owners, about a potential move? He's just won the double for Flamengo.
He has, like a couple of months on from winning the Copa Libertadores, and away he goes. I mean, look, you know Dotun as well as us that Brazilian club football doesn't really do rational. You know, there's a lot of money in it, which has changed things. But you know,
it does chaos very well, though.
Yeah, but it already did chaos very well, as you said. And you know, I don't think coaches generally are safe. It's interesting to see him replaced by Leonardo Jardim, who came back from Brazil to chill in Monte Carlo for a bit, where he always comes after he like leaves or gets fired from a job, and then he's, you know, talking of a little bit of a holiday, making you forget what a madhouse it is. Jardim's gone straight back into Brazilian football. But look, Filipe Luís, for a rookie coach, did an amazing job there, and getting the Libertadores over the line, especially when you bear in mind the dimension of Flamengo and the pressure. And we've talked a lot in OTC this week about pressure. We're talking on Thursday about Marseille and how that might be defined, and you know, even the pressure that exists at Leverkusen. But you know, Flamengo are that kind of Marseille size of club. You know, they're on a completely different level, really. But yeah, it broke in the Brazilian media this week that he'd been chatting to Blueco, apparently not as regards the Chelsea job, as regards, because of course we think Filipe Luís because he played for Chelsea, but actually as regards maybe the Strasbourg job a little bit later down the line. Now, this is meant to have happened a few weeks ago. So since both Liam Rosenior and Gary O'Neill have been appointed, it would not surprise me to see him get welcomed into the Blueco loop. But I guess that's different to the actual question that Weetabix is asking.
I think it's just one of the layers. And it's interesting that Filipe Luís, when he retired, he went straight into coaching. He coached the Flamengo youth team and then did very well there. And he came to the main team. The basis of his contract and the structure of it and the money that he was on was pretty much the same. So a contract discussion / wrangle was always going to occur at some time. Filipe Luís wanted to be rewarded recently for what he did at Flamengo. Rightly so, in my eyes, and I think in everybody's eyes.
Yeah.
He eventually got his deal. In the middle of all that, Flamengo were, you know, just a little bit standoffish about it and said, oh, you know, I can't pay you all that money, all this money and such. And they obviously would have looked at potential replacements in that time. So to bring up this Blueco thing, it's just a bit of a coincidence.
Does it feel like an excuse to you?
I think it feels like a bit of an excuse to me. And also it doesn't really add up to me about Filipe Luís going to Strasbourg as well. Brazilian football is in a very good place in terms of the financials of it, in terms of the standard of it. More players are staying, more players are going as well. We'll get on to one who went to Flamengo in a minute. So I think that was a good position for him. I think Flamengo will very, very much regret this decision. It's not very often you get a young coach of this level, you know, who's very happy where he is. And I think they've done this all a little bit rashly. But there's other layers to this. I think as well as the contract, there's also, you got to take into account Flamengo played a very intense style under Filipe Luís. He's somebody who likes to very much defend from the front, very intense pressing that he likes in his football. Couple that with a very, very aggressive fixture schedule that they had. And you got to remember that Flamengo were in the Club World Cup, so they were playing high-profile, big fixtures in December. The Brazilian season had actually been pushed forward to start mid-January. So they went straight back into Brazilian football off the back of this. And don't forget, you're playing this brand of football that requires a lot of energy. And I think they tired a little bit. Results had gone off. There was particularly high-profile defeat to Lanús. So there was that involved as well. There's also been Lucas Paquetá. a very, very sentimental move. Going back to Flamengo, there's a lot of ties there, a lot of emotions there with that. He said himself, I needed to go to Flamengo more than they needed me. In that number 10 role that he likes, that was there for him, they've already got a brilliant player in lovely little Uruguayan player, Diarra Queta, who I think in the 90s and the 2000s was probably the era for him. It's funny watching him in modern football now.
Can I ask you how many times you bought him on Football Manager?
Oh, far too many. I did consider dyeing my hair blonde. I love him that much. I've actually got a Flamengo shirt with his name on the back. Wonderful footballer. Anyway, so he's already there. And Paqueta's involvement and influence has been extremely restricted. He's sitting on the bench for an hour in some games and such. So that's been troubling for him there. So there's and Filipe Luís had to deal with that situation.
So do you feel like Paqueta's been a bit foisted on him?
I think so. I think they needed a striker. They needed a striker more than anything. Flamengo. They needed a mobile striker, somebody with a bit of physicality. They didn't have that. I tell you, I don't think he would have gone because he wanted to stay in Europe. But honestly, somebody like Hendrik would have been absolutely ideal. He wouldn't have gone back to Brazil, I don't think, anyway. But just to give you an idea of the type of striker that they needed. So that's what I think they suffered as a result of that. And it's ended in the way that this has. I think it's a real shame because he's an unbelievably talented manager. And, if Andy mentioned Bluco next Chelsea, he's got to be in line for that Letty job when Simeone decides to walk away.
He'll be back.
Yeah. But who knows? Maybe Inter gets fed up with Kivu this summer and say, we want to move on. Simeone, did you fancy it? Simeone goes to Inter. Filipe Luís to Atleti. I'm just playing matchmaker with managers and jobs here.
It's funny actually. If you though look at say, imagine Simeone moved on from Atletico. I think there's a far longer list or a far better list of feasible candidates for Atletico than there is for Real Madrid. Because I think you add him to that, you add Thiago Motta to that as well potentially. I think would be someone who's quite interesting. There's quite a few.
I like Gallardo as well. Martin de Michelis has just gone to Real Mallorca in Spain. Who knows if he does really well there over the next year or so, and then it gives Simeone maybe a little bit more time for a farewell at Atleti and such like that. Who knows? He could be in the offing as well. But
here, I'll tell you who I think would be really good for Atleti. Xavi.
Oh, that wouldn't fly.
Oh, it'd be fun.
I couldn't see that.
Come on.
I couldn't see that happen. Atleti's fans no, that wouldn't sit well with them. It needs to be one of their boys. I think, yeah.
Watch this space, I think, is the conclusion to your questions, Weetabix 5. And from Tylino on Insta, why has there been an influx of young Scandinavian players at the typical big three in Portugal? They had Victor Gyökeres, amongst other things, didn't they?
Yeah, you see, I don't often use the mainly biblical verb beget or begat, but I'm going to now because...
So who beget who and who begat who?
Well, basically, success begat success, especially when it comes to overseas players in any particular league. I think if you look at Japanese players in the Bundesliga, for example, going back, sort of 15 years now, really, that became something that became a productive pipeline. I think what's notable, and you think of Victor Gyökeres is the obvious one. Benfica have had Samuel Dahl, who's done very, very well for them after coming in from Roma. Frederick Ausnes, who's been brilliant over the last couple of years. You look at the captain of Sporting, Morten Hjulmand, who will probably be their next big sale. And I think the fact that he's become captain, again, is a clue to the answer of this question. And then you look at Porto over the last little while, not just signing Dennis Gül from Swedish football, even though he's a Turkish international, but Victor Froholt from Copenhagen has been the big one, really. He's been absolutely brilliant for them this season. And I think when you look at those players, yes, they're all technically good, but you look at the physical side of them, and you look at the fact that in the past 5 years, Portuguese football has become a lot more physical. And I think that tells you why you've got more and more Scandinavian players coming in. Because if you're looking at someone like Froholt, for example, who's a teenager, who's got a very high technical level, but he's also someone who plays like he's got 5 lungs. And you think that is the direction that Portuguese football is going in, and that's why it's been pretty effective in European competitions, because I guess it's gone in that direction for 2 reasons. Firstly, I think you look at Sergio Conceição and his time at Porto, and that's had a massive effect on the way that Portuguese football is played. And the fact that it allowed a team with a relatively small budget to exist at a high level in European competitions, I think was a template for others, even though Sporting and Benfica would never say, oh yeah, we took tips on Sergio Conceição. They're never going to say that out loud. But I do think that has an influence. I think if you look at the development of Cristiano Ronaldo, and of course he's very closely watched at home, that's a big part of it as well. But also, you have to look at where Portugal is in the pecking order of European leagues. And the fact is, it's a selling league, and it has been a selling league for 20 years. And I guess the fact is, David, those players are never going to Portugal as an end destination. They're going there as a sort of finishing school to develop them with any luck, develop them so they can provide good service, but also for the very best of them, so they can sell them on to the next level, like Gyökeres and like will happen with Morten Hjulmand.
And like what's happened in Spain. La Liga have been very profound in terms of eyeing Scandinavian players. Some clubs have had a great deal of success with them. Celta Vigo, many years ago they brought Daniel Vass in, who became a bit of a cult figure there, and he was a fantastic player there. And there's been several since then. You know, they had John Guidetti for a bit as well, and then Jürgen Strand Larsen. They sold him to Wolves, and he then went on to Crystal Palace. So there's him as well. They got William Svedberg, really nice young Scandinavian player as well. So they have found success in it. I think a lot of, and Andy makes a great point of just about what tier of league it is, or tier of club, it is.
Affordability comes into it as well.
Affordability, you start assessing it. Players are more expensive elsewhere. I tell you what, I think a lot of these Scandinavian players are being flagged up on data programs and such that are being used by clubs. If you look, there's a lot in the Championship now as well. Blackburn, Norwich have identified a lot of Scandinavian players in the past few years, just to name some. So if you have a system, your data system that I think a lot of clubs are using, and you're looking about, 9 times out of the 10, it's a way of basically saying, we've got this player with these stats, this ability, and you're looking for a comparison. You can't buy the comparative player in Liga 1 or La Liga. So you then go over and have a look in Sweden. You have a look in Denmark, and you will find those players. And adaptability is a big thing as well. It's very easy transition now for many years for Scandinavians into England, and they also find it in Portugal and Spain now as well.
I mean, the other possible answer to this is that if you look at a couple of Norwegians now going into Benfica as well, is maybe Lars Sivertsen and Jose Mourinho are actually great mates. I mean, if that is the case, Lars is covering it very well.
He's doing it well. He wears it well nowadays as well. May I just say that's such a fascinating answer to this question. I'm grateful to both of you. I think we should, keep an eye on this one and maybe discuss it some more in the future. However, this question has come from Pat on X. Last week, Andy said Dortmund of the... In fact, I'm going to ask you this, David, first of all, before I go to Andy. He did say this, I can confirm. Last week, says Pat on X, Andy said Dortmund have the best currywurst in West Germany. But previously, he said that Bochum had the best currywurst in the Bundesliga. So which German club does the best currywurst?
Why are you looking at me?
I was going to say, before David answers this, you would give him a sick bag.
It's unbelievable. Is this a joke? Come on, this is Andy's...
I know what Andy's going to say. I can hear it coming, particularly the West Germany bit of it.
Yeah, firstly, I definitely didn't say West Germany. What I actually said is Nordrhein-Westphalia, which is the region in which Dortmund is in, also that Bochum is in, that has the best currywurst. There's no doubt about that. And as part of a big game in Nordrhein-Westphalia, you definitely need some currywurst at half-time. Bochum are still the undisputed. They are still the undisputed. And the sooner we see them back in the Bundesliga, the better for everyone.
It's interesting. There is this...
Hang on, why are you answering this? You didn't want to a moment ago. Where have you come from?
It's interesting that there is this this kind of currywurst culture and such in Germany, and just bringing it over to Spain, where you don't really buy food in stadiums. You will see, you're watching the Liga game, and everybody's got their sandwiches, bocadillo, wrapped in tin foil and they're unfilmed. So they'll make it at home, they'll put a bit of serrano ham and such, and they'll take it to the stadium and they'll open it there. And it's interesting that the big grounds and such, that food culture isn't really there. But when I did travel and I went to maybe Segunda B or Tercera games, just down in other regional leagues, what I loved the most, there was always a kitchen, and there was always maybe a grandma or a family who worked at the local club, and they were cooking everything up, all the fresh lomo and the sausage and everything like that. And so you got a nice hot sandwich. So the food was better in those local grounds than it was at the big grounds, because there was always a family or a grandma cooking it away, and she was just shouting out like lomo, serrano, and it was brilliant.
I was going to ask you why people go into Spanish football like wrap their bocadillos in tin foil, but presumably you have your sandwich, then you pop the tin foil on your head and start moaning about the refereeing, right?
That's it. Yeah, you start on your peepers, and that's why you find them scattered everywhere in Spanish stadiums on the floor. You get a bit angry at your team because they haven't scored. You wave your white hanky a little bit. Half time comes, right, okay, I can unwrap my sandwich now and get that out. And then the second half starts and you full off your giant baguette that you bought from the Mercadona down the road.
Well, whether you like your currywurst or not, Pat or Next, thank you for asking the question. And we rely on your questions, obviously, for Ask OTC, but it's always great to get both Andy and whoever the guest is defending themselves from a previous episode, if you see what I mean. Anyway, it's now time for our game of the week. Each week, we recommend a game for you to watch at the weekend. And just as importantly, we also suggest the food that you should be having with it. Andy, do you fancy going first on this one?
Milan derby. But I won't be doing the Milan anthem because AC are away, Inter are the home team. Yes, I know they play at the same stadium. So it would be Ligabue coming out of the speakers rather than the Milan anthem. I'm tempted to say this is more about pride than anything else because, of course, Inter have this double-digit lead at the top of the table at the moment. But Milan's aim at the start of the season was to get into the Champions League. That is not yet sealed, especially with a few drop points of recently, and the Champions League race is pretty close. The other thing is, for Inter, this is a massive matter of pride because they played Milan 5 times last season and they didn't beat them once. And this has been the stick to beat Inter with, hasn't it? Nicky Bandini said it when she was on here before. They're not able to get it over the line in the big games. They lost to Milan earlier in the season as well, despite that big lead at the top now. So this is a big, big deal for Inter.
And that's Sunday at 7:45. What can we eat with it?
Well, outside San Siro, you can eat pretty much anything, especially if it's a toasted sandwich. Now, the last time I was at San Siro, I had what I would say, and I don't use this term lightly at all, perhaps the greatest hot dog that I'd ever had, because it was toasted all the way through, bun and dog, but also it had roasted peppers in it. Now, that to me was an interesting twist on the hot dog. Now, normally I would go for some sort of schnitzel or some sort of like grilled meat because they're these little bars they have outside. You know, it's very much part of the match day experience, or your knockoff shirts or that sort of stuff. I know a member of our production staff knows exactly what I'm talking about from his recent visit there, but that is very much...
You got a knockoff shirt? You went all the way there and you got a knockoff shirt?
Well, I hope so. He's doing it wrong if he didn't. So I think both of those things are important. I mean, obviously it's important to eat the food and then get the knockoff shirt because you've got to make sure it fits.
It's a good point you make. And also, an issue with you, it's Pink's in Hollywood. That's where you get your best hot dogs. Trust me, I'm not saying that
You're a Pink's loyalist, aren't you?
I am, as you know, indeed. Anyway, do you fancy, David, following that?
Yeah, I'm going to the game between the losers. That's Athletic.
Yes.
Who in the Athletic, who were knocked out of the Copa del Rey by their rivals Real Sociedad. And then Barcelona, who were knocked out by Atletico Madrid despite their best efforts.
So this is a final that will never be, but should have been.
Exactly.
Okay.
Well, a lot of people would have wanted to see this final. The Basques versus the Catalans, I think there's always like a nice angle to this one. And look, this is Barcelona going to San Mamés on a weekend. Honestly, the bars around Bilbao will be absolutely popping. I'll get into the food in a minute and what have you. But this is exciting because, look, Atletic's form inconsistent, indifferent this season. They have got a lot of pushing to do if they want to make Europe and get in the Champions League, and they need that because the Basques, they Athletic are paying some big wages out there, so they need that money. Trust me, they're financially stable. They're in a good position, but they need that money to keep coming in. And then Barcelona have obviously got the pressure at the top of the Liga, so they need to win. And this is one of the most difficult fixtures in the running. So this is going to be an interesting game, and there's some absolute classics down the years of Athletic versus Barca in San Mamés, and I'm probably going to go back to that old Bielsa versus Guardiola face-off in the rain and Messi getting kicked up. So I'm going to put those YouTube highlights on, I think, before I get this game on. In terms of food, we're in the culinary capital of the world for me. I don't think you can beat Basque cooking. I think it's the absolute best. I'm going to go for some pinchos. And there's a little bar not too far from San Mamés, actually. And they do one. It's fried egg with some blood sausage on top. I always used to get the Tabasco just off the bar and put a bit of Tabasco on top of it as well, just to add a little bit of extra. But it's absolutely fantastic. And morcilla is one of the best foods. It's essentially Spanish black pudding. Just all the pork, fat, rice, onions, all the good stuff.
Of course.
So
all the healthy stuff.
These Basque lads don't get to be 6'5", and play centre back, just living on bread and water. Got to get that.
When you go up to get the pinchos, right, you take a plate off the bar and then you essentially fill it in a lot of places. Yeah. Do you do the Alan Partridge thing and take your own plate?
I'd love to. For a start, don't fill it. Bad etiquette. That's what the tourists do. You don't fill it. You get maybe 2 or 3 first off the bar. Make sure you leave your sticks there as well, because obviously the barman wants to see how many you've had. So just get 2 or 3. But in Bilbao or San Sebastian, you hop. So you get like 2 or 3 in one place, hop on to the next one, get a beer, get another 2 or 3. So you get to sample them all, basically.
Save me a seat at that restaurant. Yeah, David, thank you. That's Athletic Club versus Barcelona Saturday at 7 p.m. And that is it for us for this episode. Thank you for listening to Ask OTC. And if you'd like to ask a question, you can contact us at any time at OTC Pod. You can also email us, otc@footballramble.com. Andy, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dotun.
David, thank you.
Thank you, my man.
We'll see you next week.